Dungeon Meshi is a 2014 fantasy manga written by Kui Ryoko, adapted recently by the esteemed Studio Trigger, and it is amazing. Following the story of dungeon explorer Laios Toden, he leads his party into the dungeon, regularly running expeditions and uncovering its secrets. In a stroke of bad luck, they meet the king of mukbang videos, a red dragon. This ends in his sister and healer of the group, Fallen, becoming an unfortunate collateral in the dragon's all-new human taste test video. Right before she becomes human Tartar though, she successfully teleports Laios and the rest of the party back to the surface, saving their asses. Now all hope isn't lost, they can still go back down and revive her corpse, but that's on the condition that they retrieve her before she's fully digested. But with all their food and supplies stranded at their recent battle, the party is broke, maidenless, and hungry. It also doesn't help that two of their previous party members bitched the fuck out, leaving only Marcel and Chilchuk, the mage and rogue of the group, left to assist Laios. In order to save her from an impending digestive death, they venture back down regardless, picking up a very attractive dwarf named Senshi along the way, opting to survive on the thriving ecosystem of the dungeon and its mobs. Unlike most fantasies where characters somehow survive off the blood of their foes, normal folk like the cast will probably cease to exist without proper sustenance. And when you're fighting big bad monsters in the dungeon back to back to back, the food going into your body is important as hell. Now I know, I have a 15-minute video on Oshinoko, so I'm not exactly the most intelligent or trustworthy individual either. However, as an avid monster enjoyer, join me as I try to explain the intricacies of world building and character design. Speaking of the characters, I may have advertised the main cast to seem like a group of very well functioning and responsible members of society. What I failed to mention, however, is the fact that these guys are fucking weirdos. Laios is an absolute freak of nature who on first glance fits the stereotype tank musclehead of the group. However, even though he can seem amazingly brazen and nit-witted at times, he's the warm-hearted leader of the party, harboring a genuine well-informed adoration towards the diverse nature of the dungeon and her monstrosities, almost to a fault at times. He constantly seeks out new experiences, being way too enthusiastic to consume the local wildlife at the constant concern of his party. Moving on to Marcel. What would a D&D-like anime be without its very own mage? And of course she would be the most well-adjusted too. Marcel is genuinely the funniest fucking character in the show. She completely subverts the expectations of what an elf from a typical fantasy world should be. Being the most picky member of the group, it makes her reactions to the monster takeout all the more entertaining. Even with her goofy antics at times, she's still an insanely fun and lovable character, with her own standout moments in the series, at times downright becoming a cool ass force to be reckoned with. She's also been a poster anime girl for a bit on Twitter, so yeah, personally my elf of the season. Okay, technically I did lie a little about the whole weirdos thing. Is the most well-adjusted member of the group, having the huge responsibility of keeping his teammates from ending up like donuts. Being the most experienced in dungeons, to almost everyone's surprise at times, he uses his years of knowledge to guide them through traps and shortcuts within the dungeon. It doesn't stop him from being as animated as the rest though, and at times even more so than the others. He's the true short king of the party and an irreplaceable pillar of deadpan hilarious reactions to the gang's hijinks. And that leads us to Senshi, the final member of this party. I mean, where do I even start? He's perfection. Attractive tendencies towards strong, buff and handsome dwarven men aside, Senshi is the certified cook and expert of the dungeon's ecosystem. Having been picked up right at the start of the show, he's the freshest member of the party, although sometimes it doesn't really feel that way. He's in charge of ensuring that the group doesn't end up like the majority of college students who live off a strict diet of instant noodles and hard alcohol. Now I know I made this cast look like a bunch of fucking crackheads, in which they are, but they also are one of the most fun cast of characters I've had the opportunity of experiencing. The dungeon is a nasty place, and it can get really depressing when your sister is literally dying in a dragon's stomach. Despite that, the cast keeps things relatively lighthearted. You'd think it'd make the series seem overly goofy, but it doesn't at all. Conflicts within the group still arise on contrasting ethics and morals, but they aren't contrived. Each of them have their own flaws and insecurities, but it just humanizes them even more, making them genuinely likable characters. There's a serious concern going down into the depths of the dungeon, so it's really hard to find people who want to go down there willingly unless you have certain services. That's why it makes it even more endearing to see the party bond amidst the madness of the dungeon. Tangent time, we will get back to the monsters soon, don't you worry, don't fucking click off the video, don't do it. Recently, I've been playing games like Don't Starve together with a group of friends. Those experiences heavily influenced the making of this video, and for good reason. In Don't Starve Together, you and your friends are thrown into the unholy land of the Constant, where you'll work together to survive everything the game throws at you. From declining sanity to eyebirds who will smash you into the floor, the game is truly a relaxing experience. However, as you play the game more and more, you learn to have fun being comfortable in this godforsaken land, slowly learning the ropes and exploring your surroundings. That is, until your inevitable demise. Coming back to the same point you had previously, but avoiding the same outcome requires a certain change in approach, using the knowledge gained from a previous failure, even more so in survival type games. But overcoming that challenge with newfound knowledge and applying it to different areas of the game helps you feel like you've understood maybe a tiny fraction of the land you've been thrown into. And it's here that I find myself enjoying Dungeon Meshi the most. At its core, surviving in the dungeon can be broken down into two parts, hunting the monsters then cooking them. Although one requires significantly more bloodshed, the other is equally deadly in its own right if you lack the knowledge and experience. Even simple dungeon mobs like slimes are complicated organisms on closer inspection, suggesting that with the proper understanding of these mobs, killing and eating them would be way easier. And with resurrection possible, much of the threat of death becomes removed completely, allowing explorers to chip away at the dungeon slowly. It's why Senshi becomes so valuable right off the bat. Having lived in the dungeon for over 10 years, he's not just surviving but thriving off the ecosystem. And even then, there's moments his knowledge has been shown to be incomplete, unaware of secret Easter eggs scattered around in areas he's passed all the time. It's through that overwhelming daunting feeling of the unknown that the dungeon feels like one big game at times, and it's so great. Speaking of great, Kui Ryoko did an absolutely amazing job building this world, with a standout area being character design. Passing statements like clothing and other anime become channels within Dungeon Meshi to tell you more without ever saying a single word. Take Marcel as an example. Marcel amongst the cast stands out as the character who takes care of her appearance the most, a silent nod to her noble upbringing as an elf. Her hair constantly morphs, with every episode a new hairstyle being worn. And you know why? Because the hair of a mage directly ties into their magical strength, and is never brought up as a big thing at all. It's just kinda given in small doses and not much is really ever said about it. Even the many monster races frequently given the default skin treatment in other anime are embellished with their own identities in Dungeon Meshi. They're drawn with a different array of body types, suggesting the effects of different diets and how they help those very races survive their unique circumstances. Everything is drawn with purpose, be it functional, aesthetically, or something symbolic for the characters themselves, and helps to breathe life into a world that already feels like it moves when you're not looking at it. I'm a huge sucker for cool fantasy worlds, and when you have a world that's polished with this level of care, you feel that shit, man. There's no big power-ups or crazy fucking superpowers, it's just a big world that makes you feel small. Every episode I felt like I too was exploring a new biome, encountering new mobs, all while looking for my next meal. And at times it had me looking at plants and animals outside and wondering, shit, I wonder what that shit tastes like. Dungeon Meshi takes its diverse ecosystem and just paints it everywhere. Amongst the cast, Laios and Senshi immediately stand out as the ones who take the most interest in it, constantly inquiring about the different species of the dungeon. But even those in the party who weren't initially interested are dragged in. Ancient traps litter the dungeon, suggesting to Chilchuk the existence of older civilizations far before the current age, while magic wielders challenge Marcel's conventional understanding of what she's learnt about magecraft. It becomes ever apparent that when you enter the dungeon, you merely become another one of its ever-shifting pieces. And it's that feeling that makes you want to keep watching this show. The feeling of truly not knowing the world around you, and that only by exploring will you understand it more. Dungeon Meshi isn't game-changing, it's not a Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2 level lightfest, nor is it the next Shinkai movie. If you're looking for some crazy superpowered fantasy setting, Dungeon Meshi is definitely not for you. But those willing to put down the Adderall and just nourish themselves with the world of Dungeon Meshi, I think you'll find yourself pleasantly surprised with what you'll find. Even though I came knowing I'd be able to see some beautiful food, I stayed around hoping and praying for the characters' well-beings, excited to see what they'd find next. And maybe that's the true magic of what Dungeon Meshi really is. I'm aware I've only barely scraped the surface of the story, but that's truly just a testament to the world building which Kuiryoko has done. I've had so much fun watching the series, and with the anime still ongoing, I can't wait to see how the rest of the manga gets adapted. I'm just hoping that the cast doesn't do anything too stupid. I mean, surely they tone it down eventually, right?